Peace. Peace is not merely the absence of some negative force, but the presence of some positive force. Peace is not an empty slate. Perhaps you have been in a situation, I know I have, maybe growing up, where kids are making a lot of noise and trouble, and maybe a sibling or a cousin is poking you, and a grown-up says, "Can't I get a little peace in here, a little peace and quiet?" And the message that we tend to internalize from that is that peace is whatever makes the grown-up happy, that we should just be quiet. We can still be angry at our sibling or our cousin or scared of them. We just have to do it quietly. And that often gets translated into other scenarios as we grow older. Just make peace. Can't you get along? Perhaps as an adult, a young adult, an older adult, you've been in a situation in work, in a home setting, in some other setting, where you've been very uncomfortable, but in the name of peace, you don't say anything. You don't want to make trouble. Sometimes we're even told not to make trouble. Don't stir the pot. Things are quiet now. Have you ever felt like you're walking on eggshells around a person? That one person at work, maybe, oh my gosh, don't do anything to ruffle Roger's feathers. Or maybe it's in a family situation. I don't want to do anything to upset auntie or uncle or mother or father or brother or whomever, because it's peaceful now. But is it? Is that really peace? And that can be in larger institutions too. This is how we institutionalize racism. Isn't this what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was saying? Wasn't this what many of the civil rights marchers heard when they went down south? Our Black folk, often the words were not Black folk, are happy here. Read quiet and not making trouble. It's all those Northerners coming down and stirring up the pot. It was peaceful here until you got here. But was it? Or was it peaceful? Was it comfortable for the oppressor? Was it comfortable for the oppressor? Now, there can be oppression in many situations. There can be oppression in a micro level. If you're being bullied as a child by someone in the class, or a sibling or a cousin, and the teacher or a parent or another adult says, can't you just get along and be quiet without listening to the serious troubles that are going on? That's not peace. That advantages the oppressor. And if everybody at work is tiptoeing around so that we don't set off the one toxic person at work, we're all walking on eggshells because it's peaceful now, leave it alone. That advantages the oppressor, that advantages the toxic person at work. And that's true in any organization. And if we do that as a culture, why are we digging up all this stuff about the January 6th thing? It's over, it's in the past. That advantages insurrectionists, the oppressors. When one person says, we need to talk about this, and another person says, why do we need to dig all that up? My question is, who stands to gain and lose from this? What is somebody afraid of? What can we possibly lose from bringing things out into the open? Well, one of the things people are afraid of is that they might feel ashamed. In smaller situations, right? I know I did a wrong thing. I don't want to talk about it now because I'm ashamed of it. And if we say it out loud, you're going to know that I did a wrong thing, and I'm going to be ashamed in front of you. Now, in a covenanted community, we have a responsibility to each other. And that means a responsibility to help people know that they are loved and part of the community, and that we all do things that are out of covenant from time to time, and that people are part of the covenant no matter what. That you are accepted here. But it's important to talk about it. But another reason that people often don't want to talk about things like that is a loss of power. If we name these things, if we talk about them, I won't have power over you anymore. If my brother and I are poking each other in the back of the car, and my parent says, instead of, can't you kids just make peace? But stops the car, turns around and starts and has a real conversation about poking and why this is not acceptable, and boundary. And what consequences there might be. Well, then maybe some of that power is gone. if we investigate what happened on January 6th, and there are real consequences for breaking the law, maybe some of that power is gone. Now, if we really want to have peace, as the Reverend Dr. King reminded us, we have to have a positive force. We can't just get rid of the bad stuff. Yeah. We can't just get rid of the bad stuff. We need to get rid of the bad stuff. Have you ever, as a kid, been told, apologize, and then you say you're sorry because you've been told to say you're sorry, but you're not sorry, and you know that kind of, I'm sorry, but you don't mean it, and you're going to go back and do the same thing right again. You can't make peace while the behavior is still continuing. The bad stuff needs to stop. So if you're getting poked and the poker says, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, and 2 seconds later is poking you, it hasn't stopped. There's no progress. But what happens if everybody sits down with that one guy at work that everybody's been tiptoeing around? Now, I don't know, every situation is different. But does that person know that everybody's been tiptoeing around him? I don't know. What happens when you sit down with one another and agree to work things out? Well, first you agree to stop the behavior. So a truce, again, that's not peace. That's just stopping the behavior. But that might be a first step. But then you have to work it out. You have to talk about the things. So what do you talk about? Well, a lot of times you talk about the history of what happened. You might talk about where things came from, how this started, how you feel, and where you're going to go from here, and what you're going to do to build things better moving forward. Have you ever heard the expression, when we know better, we do better, or when we knew better, we did better? Well, that works. But it is work. We have to work at it. We can't rely on things we thought we always knew. We can't rely on the way things always were before. The world changes constantly. There is new information constantly. And we must assimilate it. Now, I'm going to say a hard thing here. Many of us, probably most of us in this congregation, come from a very privileged group of people, which means that we tend to be the oppressors. We tend to be the oppressors. We may not mean to be, but we benefit from things just by virtue of the color of our skin, our sexual orientation, our gender identity, our socioeconomic class. So when someone comes to us and tells us, I have been hurt, if we really want peace, what is it incumbent upon us to do? Well, remember, just saying, oh, peace, everything's fine, that benefits us, but that isn't true peace. What is incumbent upon us to do is to say, oh, I'm ready to listen. Please tell me more. And then to say, what can I do to help you in this? How can I be an ally? It's easy to get defensive, isn't it? Especially when we didn't mean to hurt anyone. But if we really want that true peace, that real peace, that lasting peace with one another, that peace of connection, that interdependent peace, we need to be able to understand one another. So here's a trick in conversation. Because you know what a microaggression is? A microaggression are those things that sometimes they sound like they might be compliments, but they're not really. They're ways of quietly keeping people down. So an example might be when a woman gives a really important presentation in a work setting. And afterwards, the first comment that a male colleague makes to her is, hey, did you do something different with your hair? Instead of commenting on the presentation itself. It sounds like a compliment, but would he say that to a male colleague? And there are other examples of microaggressions. One of the things that we can do with one another in conversation is to say something like, ouch, or oops. It's not assigning blame or motivation. It's just letting people know how it hit us. Or if we say oops, that, oh, I know that came out of my mouth and that was oops. I shouldn't have said that, right? That's one thing we can do. And perhaps you have some ideas as well. We've all been in situations where we've been uncomfortable. I want to empower you. Well, I don't have the power to empower each and every one of you in every situation, but I want to help you to feel empowered And I want us all to help each other, to feel empowered, to advocate for ourselves, and to be there for one another, and to truly build the beloved community that we seek. We say we want a peaceful world. Let's make it truly peaceful. You know, I sign off all my emails with in shalom, shalom being in a word that means the peace of God's wholeness. Let's make it that kind of peace. A world that's full of good things. A world that's full of a positive force of love, justice, and goodwill. And what a world that will be.